You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Wednesday, February 28th. The NFL is holding their annual combine for teams to get a good look at the top draft prospects of this class. And so, when you get a group of the league's media members together in one city, you tend to hear some things. GMs talk to the media, teams meet with players. It is popping this week. So joining me to talk about all of the happenings of the NFL Combine so far is Coach Dezi. Dezi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's
Awesome.
Wednesday, hump day, and I'm with you. So, what more could we ask for here? Gammon's in the house. Technics Chick is in the house.
Let's go.
I love it.
I love it. Let's get into it. We've got plenty to talk about, including some breaking news that came just, about an hour ago from Mike Garofalo, NFL insider. He says that the 49ers are interviewing Chiefs defensive back coach David Merritt for their defensive coordinator position. Merritt, a longtime trusted assistant for Steve Spagnuolo, helped coach up KC's fourth-ranked pass defense this season. I just got to say right off the bat, Dezi, that I love this move. I know the 49ers were looking at, additional external candidates to add to the interviewees. I also know the 49ers needed to, check off the Rooney Rule. I hope this is more than that, though. I really do hope, because I personally would love this. I think David Merritt has a lot of experience that would help the 49ers. How do you feel hearing this name?
It's music to my ears. I love this. This is so sexy. I can't even tell you. Like, when I saw this, I almost dropped my phone, did a cartwheel, grabbed my ibuprofen, and couldn't get to this podcast quick enough. That is what I'm talking about. You want to be aggressive, you want to go for it, you go for the best out there. And for someone like David Merritt, who is under Spags, this is just tantalizing. So I'm all about this. Another thought, and I didn't say this last week, but why wouldn't we go after some of these teams that have great defenses, right? Why are we not looking at the DBs coaches and the linebacker coaches for the Chiefs, for the Ravens, for the Cleveland Browns? I think there's talent there. And if they're coming in as a DB coach or a LB coach or a line coach, they're not going to be someone that's too big for Shanahan, right? They're going to understand that they're still under his umbrella. And it kind of would be a good fit just in terms of that, right? It's not like a Rex Ryan coming in or a Belichick, big name, been there, done that. And that can cause some issues, but I really, really like this.
Yeah, and as Technic Chic says, the Niners have had enough of folks poaching their coaches. Time for the 49ers to poach some of the best themselves. I feel like the 49ers have been too nice, right? Why just limit yourself to the guys who are available? Why not go for guys who are currently hired elsewhere? And, we did talk about Jeff Ulbrich, that was legit interest, I think, of the 49ers that has been corroborated by Mike Silver and Tim Kay and others as well. But just the complications of him being the defensive coordinator for the Jets and that being a lateral move complicates things a little bit. So it seems like that's not going to happen, and that probably won't come into fruition for the 49ers. But talking about David Merritt, let's look at, and I know this is tiny, so bear with me here, but let's talk about some of his experience in the NFL so far. He's a former player, for one, and his coaching experience dates back to 1997, where he started off at the outside linebackers coach at Tennessee Chattanooga.
That was a good year, by the way, just saying.
Was it?
For
Okay.
those of you not alive during that time, just going to let you know it's a good year.
Wow. I guess 1997. Yeah, there's probably some younger listeners, viewers out there. I was alive, but I was 6, so I didn't know. I didn't
Oh,
quite
gosh.
know about Tennessee Chattanooga at that time. But yeah, I mean, you see, currently he's the DB coach, but you look all the way in between that. He had some time coaching linebackers, defensive line. He was a defensive assistant, quality control, secondary. So I mean, his experience reaches far and wide, here. And I think that's exactly what the 49ers need in looking for their next defensive coordinator. Um, and I think that's kind of what the problem was, with Steve Wilkes, is he was more of that secondary guy. And we saw too often that the other pieces of the puzzle on the defense were a little disconnected. So someone who has experience coaching every single facet of the defense, I think, would be beneficial to them.
Absolutely. And I can't see, I was just all boasting about being around in 1997. And now, like my old eyes, I can't see the tiny print. Was he
Let
at
me
the
see if
Jets the same time as Rex?
That's a good question. Let's see. Hold on. Did that make it any better? If you can zoom in. So I'm seeing he was with the Jets 2001 to 2003 as a defensive assistant and linebackers coach.
Let me see. When was Rex there? He was there. I think it was after that because he was in
Okay.
Baltimore during their first Super Bowl. So no, he wasn't. Just
Okay. Good
was
to
looking
cross
at that.
check though. Good to cross check. And what I will say is, one thing that stuck out to me is obviously he's been with the Chiefs since 2019. I mean, has experience probably with Mooney Ward as well. We've heard Ladarius Sneed could potentially be traded this offseason. So I don't know. It's got me thinking, and maybe I'm thinking way too optimistically, but
No, we're putting that out in the
just
universe.
saying.
We're putting it out there. I love it.
Yeah.
I love all of it. And MVS got cut. Did you see that? I know it's the other side of the ball.
I saw that as well. So yeah, a lot of changes coming to the Chiefs potentially, especially if this move does happen for the 49ers. And I'm sure we're going to hear about another name or two, going forward, of who the 49ers are also interviewing throughout this process. While we are on the topic of defensive coordinator here, let me just situate myself with these slides and make sure I'm showing the right thing, because I thought it was interesting, Desi, that John Lynch did speak about the search. He was asked, if it's impacting how they're evaluating players at the combine. He pretty much said no. He also confirmed the report that Kyle Shanahan had interviewed with Brandon Staley and Nick Sorensen and is going to be interviewing with Daniel Bullocks this week. And he also pointed out the Ulbrich thing, that, okay, probably a no-go just because of that situation that he's in over there. The other thing he mentioned, and sorry, again, this is kind of tiny, but I'll read it off here as well. And again, this is from Matt Barrow's piece yesterday with The Athletic. It seemed that John Lynch, after speaking with the larger media group, had a little powwow with just the 49ers beat writers. Isn't that nice? So we got some extra information from that. And so he kind of just pointed out, the 49ers don't want to stray from their core defensive principles. They want to keep most everything the same. But he also did say, don't count out Brandon Staley. And that seems contradictory to me because Brandon Staley, as we know, he runs a 3-4 defensive front. Not to say that he can't adapt or he's not capable of changing some things around, or, the 49ers aren't capable, but it just seems a little contradictory. And I was talking with Rob about this yesterday, and he was like, why does John Lynch care who we rule out? And, we the fans rule out, or we the media rule out in this, coaching search. So I thought it was really interesting. It feels like there's a lot of smoke around Brandon Staley. And I don't like it.
No, and I wonder if it's just trying to be professional and help Staley out more than anything, right? Like making it look like there's still an opportunity there to kind of like what we did with Jimmy G, right? Like you kind of shopped him around, tried to make it, try to dress it up and look sexy, even though we're not getting anything in return for this. But it might just be like a hey, let me help you out. You're a colleague. I know you're not in with the Chargers anymore, but maybe if it looks like we're interested and we're looking at you, maybe other things will come to fruition for him. So maybe it's just one of those things is what I'm guessing, because I really don't think that this is a viable option or a good fit for the 49ers.
I think I like that what you just said. I really hope that is the case. I just found it interesting that he would kind of stick his neck out to say, well, don't forget about Staley kind of thing. So yeah, we'll see what the next few days hold for the 49ers defensive coordinator search. Of course, I mean, given that it's the combine, we're probably due to hear more reports in the coming days. So we'll keep tabs on that as we always do.
I'll tell you real quick, Steph. Sorry,
yeah.
I listened to it because I didn't read the article, but I listened to the interview with John Lynch, and I just like kudos to us for having such an incredible leader. Like he is so well spoken, so polished. Like you would never know he played safety in the NFL. And I just mean because safeties, I mean, DBs that like that, they're gritty, they're grimy, they're scrappy. And like he's suited up, clean cut, would never know that he did that once upon a time. And I say that to say that like my impression of him, that's why I had the thought about Staley, was because he is that guy. Like he just seems to be so genuine and like forthcoming. And so I genuinely think it's just like help a brother out type of situation. And he's just, but kudos to us for having him. Like I was so excited when we signed him, and I'm just another appreciation for John Lynch. That's all. That's all I want to say.
I love it. I mean, we can never, appreciate the guys that we have enough, right? And that's not to say that we're riding their coattails as everyone always makes it seem, but like, yeah, I mean, I definitely got to give up the props to Lynch. That man is media trained to a T. I mean, having done the whole media thing before becoming a GM, I think really helped out. And yeah, I mean, he handles himself very well in front of the media.
He recognizes talent, right? He called your name out.
There you go. He knows how to scout content creators. I'll give him that.
I'm here for that, Ty. I'm here for that too.
Yeah, Ty says I nominate Steph for defensive coordinator position. I could bring the energy. I know that much. I mean, and maybe once in a while I would come in and I'd do a speech in the Nick Bosa voice. Nick might not like that as much, but I feel like everyone else will. So yeah, I mean, I could throw my hat into the ring, just saying.
I'm like, and you could play one on TikTok. I mean, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I'd be a shoo-in, I think. But yeah, so speaking of John Lynch, I mean, there's a lot more to take away from, his media session that happened on Tuesday. It already feels like forever ago, by the way. Like that was just yesterday, but I feel like so much has happened since then for some reason. And, some people seem to think that whenever Lynch speaks, like we get nothing of substance or we don't really learn anything. But I kind of feel like we did, yesterday. And, yeah, we talked about the defensive coordinator stuff, but there was other things that were mentioned. And I guess we can jump into the Brandon Ayuk discussion in all of this. So again, let me get my slides right over here. People love the slides, but you got to be patient while I'm pulling them up. All right. So what John Lynch said about Brandon Ayuk when he was asked about extending him in Tuesday's presser with the larger media, he said, quote, "I think we've got a nice track record of extending the players that are important to us. And Brandon's a guy we want to keep around for a long time." End quote. That was pretty much what he said. And even before that, he was very complimentary of Brandon Ayuk. I feel like he has this kind of template now at this point for every extension. Anytime he's asked about him, he starts off really, like complimenting the player. And then he goes into, it's like a thesis statement or of some sort, there's a format to it. And so then he goes into saying how much he wants to keep that player and how much that player is important to them. So, for Brandon Ayuk, it's no different. Now, today, Chase Sr., who is at the Combine, reporting as a, 49ers insider as well as Eagles insider, he said, source, the 49ers have no plans of trading Brandon Ayuk and want to sign him to a long-term deal. Ayuk's agent is Ryan Williams of Athletes First, who is the best friend of John Lynch. Lynch was the best man in Williams' wedding. I was told, no way Ayuk leaves. That's the end of the tweet right there. And in response to that, Dezi, you said, duh. So I was like, walk me through this. This isn't a Photoshop, by the way. This is literally what Dezi said in response to this. So I guess you knew all along that, Brandon Ayuk was not going anywhere, right?
Well, we said this last week, right? I'm like, this is the same song and dance. Like come on, guys. Like, what are we doing? We've been here, done this before. We did this with Deebo Samuel. We did this with Nick Bosa. It's Brandon Ayuk's time. We did talk a little bit about, what we could get for Brandon Ayuk and that type of thing. But now, and especially now with the cap space being extended, like, really? Like, no, we're gonna grab this guy. This is, thanks, Ty. I appreciate that. Like, seriously, like, I just feel like this was a no-brainer, and it's just comical almost, all the, the big insight and comments. And I'm like, come on, man. I know we're looking for comment or content, but yeah, that's all I had to say about that.
But, I didn't know that Ayuk's agent is that close to John Lynch. I had no idea. Like, to be the best man at his wedding, like, that is pretty significant, I would say. And this just goes back to the appreciation of John Lynch, because that man is so connected throughout the league, even before, he became the 49ers GM. And I think we see the fruits of his labor bearing what would be the right way to say that? Like, it's bearing fruit for the 49ers, all the connections that he has. That's like the right way to say it.
He's raking in the harvest.
There we go. There we go. The harvest. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's probably a small world for him as long as he's been in the NFL and everything that he's done in his career, both on and off the field. I feel like, this is fun though. I love learning these connections. That is fun to see that, but I feel like it's such a small world. The NFL is just a very tight niche community. And I feel like there's a lot of this that we just don't know about, that they probably laugh at us about too. Like, like they don't know that.
But that's a good thing about the combine, or that's a cool thing about the combine. Cause like, when you're there, you kind of do see who talks with each other. And it's like, oh, like, like you're cool with this person, or, oh, I wonder what they're talking about. That's got to be an interesting conversation, to be a fly on that wall, right? I actually thought it was interesting just the way that this tweet from Chase is kind of laid out. Maybe I'm just speculating here heavily, but just it gives me the sense that his source here was Ryan Williams himself, Brandon Ayuk's agent. Like, I don't know, like what else did he have to do with that in this tweet, and to mention that and then say, I was told, no way Ayuk leaves. But that'd be crazy if Ayuk's agent said that. And I don't know, it just seems like from the time of the Super Bowl and the bad vibes we were getting surrounding Brandon Ayuk and him wanting to leave and all this stuff, the trade talk, to now, the vibes are immaculate again.
Yeah, and during that whole time, though, we never heard anything from Ryan Williams, right? It was Ayuk's girlfriend, and it was his, brother, his brother, right? Or
brother, best
family
friend,
member, they were all just, and I told you guys what, I'm not going to believe it till his mama says it, right? Like, give me his mama and then I'll believe it, because she is definitely a faithful. So, no, that would be wild though, if this did come from his agent.
Right. It would. But I mean, all of this talk surrounding Brandon Ayuk as of February 28th makes me feel very optimistic about where things are going. And I think that's a great place to be if you're the 49ers or if you're a 49ers fan. So it seems like there's a lot of optimism that this will get done. Of course, there's a lot of months ahead of us probably before it does actually get done. So, patience will prevail in this case. But speaking of Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver of the 49ers, there's another wide receiver that the 49ers want to keep, and that is Juwan Jennings. And that's something that John Lynch shared with just the 49ers beat writers after, the main session. And so, I want to talk about this because I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Juwan Jennings. I'm a fan of keeping Juwan Jennings. I think like when you look at, the possible ways the 49ers can keep him, there's two ways, right? Like he's a restricted free agent. So either the 49ers can extend him or they can offer him a tender, right? And here, credit to Matt Barrows here from his piece on The Athletic. He kind of lays out all of the different options for the 49ers here. And the reason that I highlight the second round tender is because I feel like, and I have felt like that's the most likely one for Juwan Jennings if an extension is not done. But Dezi, what do you think? Would you prefer the extension, or do you just want to do the 1 year tender, let's wait and see kind of thing?
Ooh, this is a toughie. I feel like, and see, this is why I can't be a great business person, because I get all in the feelings, right? I'm like, extend him, right? Like, keep him, he's a keeper. But, maybe it is a 1 year deal for maybe the sake of him too, right? Like, give him a year, let him ball out, and then let him go get that big money. I'm not quite sure what the right answer is yet, but I do know I love this guy a lot. And I'm just excited at the possibility of keeping him for especially this upcoming year, because I think it's going to be another special year for us. I mean, I know we went through heartache, and I know nothing has even started yet. We haven't even gotten past the combine, but I definitely think that if he's part of the roster, the offense is going to be pretty fire.
Yeah, I definitely feel good about Jennings. I feel like even throughout the season, like we saw him kind of grow and show us some new wrinkles to his game. Like he got some dog to him, man. And I think we like always kind of saw that, but I think we really saw it towards the end of the season. So definitely feel like that's a player that deserves to be rewarded. And it would be ideal for me if the 49ers were able to extend him. Now, what's interesting, right? You see the the second round tender is a 1 year, $4.9 million deal. And so if another team could match that offer, the 49ers could then decide what they do at that point. And again, Matt lays it all out here in his article, but I think with an extension, maybe there's a chance they could even lower that number a little bit, to have it go out maybe a 2 year extension, and then the first year could be a little lower than 4.9. I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas out there, but that could be something and a reason why the 49ers want to get an extension done, because maybe in the long term it'll be more favorable to them money wise.
I like that. And then, there's talk because Devo's contract will be up in what, 25?
Yeah, they have an out on Devo's contract after 25, I believe. Yeah.
So I mean, that could get interesting too, because he's kind of a dog. I'm not saying Devo's replaceable. Don't put words in my mouth, anybody. But
hey,
you want the scrap. You want to keep the scrappy wide receiver. So that could be interesting. I might like that.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm saying, I'm just saying that's like my favorite thing to say in the off season, because there's just so much that can happen.
I mean, if you throw a touchdown in the Super Bowl and catch a touchdown in the Super Bowl, I feel like you've earned a little something. So, Yeah.
He was on his way to being Super Bowl MVP, I might
Right.
add. The NFL was like, no, we can't have a wide receiver 3 be the MVP of the Super Bowl. Absolutely not.
Right.
But yes, he was definitely a dog. But another guy that the 49ers want to keep going forward, if they can make it happen, is John Feliciano, who, the veteran signing of last offseason, who, he can play center, he can play right guard. Well, both left guard and right guard, and he played at both guard spots in 2023. That's definitely someone that I would welcome back for the 49ers if, the team is able to, find a good contract for him.
Even with the Twitter situation after the Super Bowl.
So yeah, it felt like that did complicate things a bit, right? Like that's not cool. That's not cool. But I guess the way John Lynch kind of described it seemed like Feliciano probably came to him and owned up to what he did. And also, I guess John Lynch sees it more so as he was defending Colton
One
McKivitz.
player,
Yeah. And because he didn't mention
the name.
He didn't mention Spencer Burford, right? It was
Right.
just everyone else that came to that very obvious conclusion. But I don't think the intention was to throw him under the bus necessarily.
Yeah.
So
that's what I was hopeful for, that it was just an oopsie,
I think so too. And I mean, he literally admitted to being hungover. I mean,
we all were.
We all...
Sorry, I know I was.
and we still are, to be honest. They don't call it the Super Bowl hangover for nothing. That happens to the losing team just as much as, the winning team. So,
yeah.
But no, I mean, I think Feliciano would be a great choice for the 49ers to bring back. I just don't see Spencer Burford as being that guy you can depend on. And so I still think the 49ers should look to upgrade at that right side of the line, guard and tackle this offseason. But again, I think the versatility that Feliciano gives you as well, the fact that he can play 3 spots on your line, I think, he holds a lot of value to the team. We saw he can be serviceable and pretty good. So I would welcome him back, just saying.
No, I agree. I think that's a good move. I do think we still need to we need a tackle that can be yes, let's do it. I'm here for it. This year, 2025, 24, 25. So we're going to, sorry for those listening. It's just because someone wanted to party with me at the Super Bowl, the next Super Bowl, which of course it's going to be for the 24 season, but in 25
and 25.
So, yes. Okay. I'm here for it. We're doing both. We're going to do both.
Why not? Right.
Both W's. I'm putting that out there too. But yeah, I totally forgot what I was talking about. What were we talking about?
Sorry. Damn it, Ty.
Oh, I'm saying we needed to draft a right tackle that can then, Trent's not going to last. This is my biggest fear because I am a huge Trent Williams fan. Like this man, it drives me crazy. So much conversation happens, and he literally is the workhorse on that left side. And he is absolutely irreplaceable. So I have anxiety now for whenever he decides at some point that his career is going to be done. And so I just feel like let's start to fill the eggs in that basket because we need somebody strong. Let's set him up on the right side, but be kind of Feliciano-ish where he can move around and eventually take over that left tackle, get some years under working with Trent Williams and seeing how he does it and learn from him. I think that's almost as important to me as like Jordan Love, what happened with Jordan Love, like groomed under Aaron Rodgers and then came out. Like it's just as important for that left tackle, I feel. So that's my go Silverback. I'm pro Silverback. So
I mean, who isn't?
I'm just saying. I'm gonna wear all black that day that he decides to retire. Just
man, I don't even want to think about it.
I don't either.
Yeah, and the reality is that that day is going to be happening. It's not going to happen tomorrow or this season. At least that's what he has indicated, right? But we know it's going to happen soon, too soon. Even within the next 2-3 years is too soon in my book. Because a player like that is so hard to replace. So I'm with you. I think the 49ers, in addition to right tackle, you do have to look at your future left tackle. And we love the idea of, Trent being able to groom the left tackle of the future, right? So, yeah, I think this is a draft. The 49ers need a double dip on offensive linemen, right? So they need to prioritize that for once. And in the draft, and this is the right draft to do it because it's deep at offensive line. And I do think the 49ers are going to take that opportunity because I think they do know kind of what's ahead of them at this point. But Desi, I mean, going back to the combine, the 49ers are there, the scouts are there, the media members are there, and the media members got to interview players starting today. Now, team interviews have been taking place. I think they started yesterday for defensive linemen. And so defensive linemen and linebackers were the first up at the podium today. Tomorrow, it's another position group. And I believe for those of you very concerned about offensive line, that is going to be Sunday where, the media gets to interview them. So what happens when, the media interviews players, you get a lot of great answers, you get to know these guys, but also you kind of get to get a sense of what teams are interested in these players because they'll get the question, who have you met with? Have you met with the 49ers? And so we've learned a lot earlier today. As I mentioned, my draft sheet has been popping today. Like I told you guys it was going to. Look and look how many people we've got in the draft sheet. And for the audio listeners, I'm so sorry, but I will put the link to the draft sheet in the description of the podcast, so you guys can follow along to what we're looking at here as well. And for the audio listener, or sorry, for the YouTube listeners, sorry, I forgot to put the link in the YouTube description, but I will after this. But it is pinned to the top of my Twitter at Steph49K, so you can check it out there. So let's look at the names that were added today. And again, you're only going to see defensive linemen and linebackers because that's who interviewed today. So it's not like, well, the 49ers are only meeting with defensive linemen. What the hell, man? Like, are they going to draft defensive linemen in the first round again? They might. I mean, I don't know. They might. I'm just saying they might. It's possible, but not because of, who they're interviewing with so far. It's just who they've gotten a chance to interview with so far. So anyway, Desi, I'll give you a chance to, if you have any thoughts on any names that you saw so far, or just any thoughts on what the 49ers needs are at defensive linemen. I've seen a lot of people say it's not really a need. Like, what are they even doing meeting with all these defensive linemen? Again, people are already like proactively getting mad about the sheer possibility that the 49ers might draft the defensive lineman in the first round. So yeah, Ty's telling me to go full screen. Let me do that. But yeah, you look at any of these names, obviously a lot of defensive linemen, a lot of pass rushers. Are you feeling like that's a need for the 49ers?
I mean, so the 49ers have cards in their hands that we don't know, right? We don't know what they're planning to do with the current people that we have, right? There's still time. We've talked about Chase Young. There's no decision there. I think that only they truly know, but you can never have enough potential talent to look at and bring in. We have a lot of picks this season. Let's utilize them. I would love nothing more than to buff up our line on both sides of the ball. So I'm here for all of that. And the only other extensive need I think we need is to figure out what we're doing with the missing Dre Greenlaw, which still hurts my heart to say. But I know that there's reports coming out that saying it looks optimistic for 6 months, but I'm in medicine. I don't hold my breath for nothing. I've seen re-injury. I've seen failure rates. I've seen, it's supposed to be 6 months. It ends up being 9 months. So I'm not putting all my money on that. So I definitely think we still need to consider who's going to be a fill-in for a Dre Greenlaw, and even if he comes back, who's to say that he's not going to be popping in and out depending on how he feels and the inflammatory response from that. So I definitely would agree with D-line, O-line, and linebacker. If we can get, a really strong corner would be my next. I definitely think it's on the defensive side of the ball. I feel like offensively, since especially now coming out, John Lynch saying we're going to do our best with Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings. I mean, I feel like our offense is strong the way it is, minus a right guard or a right tackle. And then just it's got to be on the other side of the ball is my 2 cents on this. Now, yeah, I did. Well, go ahead. I'll let you do that because there's a couple of things. I looked at your spreadsheet and I did look at it from an injury perspective, so we can chat about that.
I love it. Yeah. I just wanted to say too, because a lot of people around this time either overvalue the 49ers meeting with certain players, like they make way too much of it, or they kind of downplay it. And I don't like either. In my mind, you just got to look at these visits as a guide, as, maybe try to find some trends of what are the positions the 49ers are looking at. Now, like I said, defensive linemen are going to be the names that we get today at the combine, but after the combine, once we have the full list of people, we'll get a better idea. Once we get into April and we start getting top 30 visit names, all of that's going to be important too. So you take all this information to kind of form an idea of what the 49ers are interested in. So this isn't the gospel. This isn't that the 49ers are going to draft every one of these players. It doesn't mean they're interested in drafting every one of these players. Sometimes when you speak to a prospect, it's, you're just looking to gather information about said player, and so all those different factors come into play. And it might mean something, it might not. But again, it's just to get a sense of some themes like the 49ers are meeting with, an offensive lineman, and all these offensive linemen they've met with kind of have this same profile. It must mean that's kind of what they're looking for as far as body types. That's what I aim to show over time with these draft sheets. It's not to be the gospel of the 49ers are definitely going to draft these players. But so I just want people to remember that, right? Yeah. And because I put this information out there, I feel like it's somewhat my responsibility to remind people of that. And so, yeah, you'll probably hear it again at some point, my little speech. But anyway, just looking at these list of guys, I mean, there's a lot of names here that intrigue me. Javon Solomon from Troy, Austin Booker from Kansas, and Darius Robinson from Missouri. To me, those 3 guys are, really impressive names as far as the pass rushers go. I believe all of them were at the Senior Bowl too. So, I know for sure Austin Booker showed out there, as well as Darius Robinson. So those names did excite me when I saw them. Another name that if you guys have been following along with the podcast, and I've mentioned before on other lives, Cedric Gray, right? He was at the Senior Bowl as well. I heard at the Senior Bowl, John Lynch loves him. The 49ers met with him at the Combine. That's not a surprise, right? After I had heard what I had heard. And so, yeah, I think some pieces, maybe falling together here and talking about the injury perspective, Dezi, maybe we wouldn't have thought that linebacker was that huge of a need. But when you look at Dre Greenlaw and you look at his timeline coming off of that Achilles injury, and I know some people, there are some doctors in the past week or so giving very optimistic 6-month timelines, right? We've heard that, but I still think that puts Greenlaw at not starting the season, obviously. And so they do have to reinforce the linebacker group and of course, also defensive line because they have some free agents going out as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say that looking at what you have highlighted right there, and none of the names you just mentioned are on my list, which is good. So all the names that you
Oh,
mentioned,
good.
I didn't, just a preliminary search. I didn't see much concern for injury. But Mason Smith tore his ACL in 2022. ACLs can get torn and they can be very successfully repaired with not a lot of sequela. So I'm not terribly concerned about him. But of note is McGregor. So Brandon McGregor out of Michigan, he had a torn MCL, PCL, and meniscus tear. Pretty gruesome injury there. And that's the interesting thing about that injury is it's two different rehab protocols. MCLs, you kind of want them to scar in and be kind of like your knee in a straight position. And the PCL is the one that you want to get moving right after surgery. So I'm guessing that was a staged repair is my guess. Potentially, I would need to look at that, but that's a pretty considerable knee injury. And then Ellis, Jonah Ellis from Utah, he had surgery for a partially torn labral tear in his shoulder. That may or may not be of any consequence either. I mean, it depends on the type of tear. They probably just went and cleaned it up. Maybe they tacked it down. Should be okay. But those are the injuries of the ones that you have highlighted, or you did have highlighted on that list. The only other thing that I saw, you probably saw this too, McKinley Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Texas A&M. A couple of possession charges. One of them was a felony possession charge. Yeah. So there's a couple of character things that I saw there. Oh, okay. I didn't scroll over on your chart. And that's the thing to be thoughtful about on him, just in knowing what the 49ers seek out in terms of just who they are as a human and what they bring into the locker room.
And again, that could very well be the reason the 49ers are like, look, we got to meet with this guy and ask him about this. Like what was going on there, So yeah, a team might have a certain reason why they want to meet with a player. For McKinley Jackson could very well have been that happened back in 2021. He was suspended for it, 2 games missed his time at Texas A&M. So yeah, that could be something potentially based on how that meeting went that would take him completely off a player's board. Not sure, right? I'm just speculating, but yeah, lots of interesting names. I think another one, so 49ers media here said that Brad Graham of the SF Niners also said that Houston defensive lineman Nelson Caesar met with the 49ers at the Senior Bowl. Haven't added that to the draft sheet yet, but thank you for making me aware of that, 49er media. I will get that on there as soon as we're off this call. Yeah, there's going to be so many, like in the next few days, there's going to be a lot of names added to the draft sheet. So make sure you guys keep it locked with that. It's a working, living, breathing document. And yeah, I got you guys. So gonna keep you updated with everything.
Shout out to you for that. That is a lot of work. Like impressive. Like bigger than the golf clap. I just don't want to be too loud on here and blow everybody's ears out. But no, that's big work.
Thank you. I find it fun. Like it's funny because I used to do the people that have followed me for like a long time on Twitter. I used to tweet out who the 49ers were meeting with, like just one off, right? Like I just tweeted out. And then I started to document like on Twitter which pro days the 49ers were attending and all that. And it like, I don't know, it just became a thing. Like people had interest in it. And I was like, oh, like this is kind of fun too, to just like, because there's so much investigative work that goes on Twitter. Like I be looking at pictures from pro days zooming in, and I'm like, that's a 49er scout right there. And yeah.
Okay, you got to change your handle from Steph 49K to Super Sleuth Steph.
Super Sleuth Steph.
I like alliteration. Super Sleuth Steph.
The Sleuther Bowl. Yeah.
Sleuther 49. There you go.
There you go. Yeah. So I don't know. I just found it fun. And I found that there are people who like that kind of content. And so I do it for myself and I do it for them too. And yeah. And that's why I feel like I get people excited about the draft, but I also feel like I got to temper expectations too, because, it doesn't always go how these, I just put out all the names. All right. I'm not saying the 49ers is going to draft anybody, except Braden Willis last offseason. I did kind of call that. So just saying, a Sleuther Rooney, Ron D says. I like that. Ty says I'm the MVP of draft prep. Shout out you guys. I appreciate it. Oh, we did have a question about Zach Zinter, who is one of the I believe he's an offensive lineman, center in this draft class. So I don't know, Dezi, if you were aware of that injury. This question from Forktail Devil P38J. What a name. So are you aware of Zach Zinter's injury, and what's your thoughts on it?
I just searched it up quickly because I don't watch college ball, just here and there. The big games that I hear about, I'll turn that on. But I did look it up. It's a fractured lower leg. So he had a tibia and fibula fracture, which is both the long bones in the lower leg. And I mean, once they're repaired, they can come back just fine. I usually don't worry about fractures too much unless they're in the joint line. Once they're in the joint line, then it can accelerate arthritic changes. And that's really what I worry about more than anything. But it seems like this was not a joint line. And again, I just briefly looked this up. It may have been across the joint line, so I would have to double check and look more closely at where that was. There's another person with a gnarly fracture that was on the list. It wasn't under the highlighted parts. Was Rex. Hayden? Isaac Rex.
Isaac Rex?
Woo, he had a gnarly one.
BYU.
Yes. So he had a gnarly lower leg ankle. They kind of called it ankle lower leg. So I worry that maybe went through a joint, but he had an external fixator. Those things are gnarly. If you haven't Googled an external fixator, make sure you have a strong stomach. It looks like, you have these pins coming out of the skin where the fracture, because the pins are there to kind of help hold the fracture in place. And so you have these pins sticking out, and then you have this contraption that's around it that looks like a cage around the leg. It's super gnarly looking. And yeah, again, if you don't have a strong stomach, don't Google it. But Google external fixators. It's pretty interesting. Medicine's just fascinating. I've always been fascinated by medicine. I've been practicing for 20 years plus, and it's just amazing how things can get, the improvements and the strides that can be made just when you think that, there can't possibly be anything more that can be done for X, and then something else comes up, and it's just fascinating. And I love being able to talk about it and talk about football. Those are like my two big loves. So fractures, not really worried if they're just clean bone fractures, but if it's crossing the joint line, there's some concern.
And Dezi, we love having your knowledge and expertise here. As it pertains to injuries, I think it really it's valuable to have that type of insight. And I normally would have no idea about any of these things. So definitely appreciate it. And I'm sure like our viewers as well do too, as we get comments about asking questions of what you think about certain injuries. But yeah, I mean, it's not day one of the combine, but it's day one of the, media interviewing the players. So it was a big day. These next few days are also going to be big. So like I said, draft sheet, make sure you guys keep that tab open, because I sure will. And I will be updating. Dezi, is there anything else that you're kind of looking forward to the 49ers looking at throughout this combine?
I'm more worried about our defensive coordinator. I'm still
Fair.
riding. I'm still
Fair.
riding high on that, but I definitely am going to be. I love your sheet because it gives me stuff to look at as someone who doesn't watch a lot of college. Because honestly, my family would just kick me out of the house because I already watch enough football, just paying attention to the NFL. But no, I definitely looking. I'll look through your list. I'm going to start looking at some plays from these incredible athletes that are coming in and seeing what looks good out there. Definitely looking at the line on both sides of the ball. I'm holding to that.
Trenches. Yep, the trenches, baby. All right. Well, for everyone that tuned in, I appreciate it. Make sure you guys like this video. I see we have like about 20 of you here. We don't have 20 likes, so make sure you hit that thumbs up for us. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, because we're going to go through a lot of content like this all throughout the off season, all through the combine, through the draft, and beyond that. And yeah, I mean, for now, have a good rest of your Wednesday. I will be going live with Trey Taylor, safety out of Air Force, in about 30 minutes for another prospect interview. But if I don't see you guys there, I really hope you do. But if I don't see you there, I'll talk to you guys later. All right. From me, from Dezi, peace.